Hi. We still have to mention a number of experiences that we can have during our sleep, which in fact are not exactly the same as our dreams. Some experiences during our sleep may appear to be of a dreamlike nature, but they must be looked at as totally different. They're more like a real experience, occurring at another level of perception, another level of reality. And as such, they do not apply to metaphorical or symbolic interpretation. So this can be the case with hearing a voice that gives you a short or a clear message. It happened to me. I woke up a number of times with a clear voice that was telling me something, that a kind of a meaningful guidance. Where did this voice come from? In my case, I do believe that this is from myself, from another part of me who is talking to myself. So it's not necessarily a communication with another being. It's just my own higher self's voice, inner voice. This can happen. It's not a dream. Another kind of communication experience can be with people out there, whether alive or not. For example, a woman who is pregnant dreams that she has a conversation with the child that she is carrying. In that experience, the being that she has a conversation with is not a baby. It's like a young person, young adult. And even though she may not clearly remember the content of the communication, she clearly has a sense of having been together with that being and having had a very meaningful discussion. And then she wakes up. This is also some kind of experience that can happen, that happens to a number of people. There can also be a kind of a meeting with that person that is not focusing on communication, that is just a sense of being together, usually with loved ones, people that we feel very close to that have possibly passed away. Psychic perceptions is another possibility. This means that the person who sleeps can be picking up information, seeing or hearing things that happened in another time, in a specific location, usually the place where you are sleeping. And I had an example of that once with a young woman who was spending a night in an ancient house where things had happened during the war, and there were very intense emotional energy that was still sort of stuck in that place. And she picked it up so she could kind of see what happened just as an observer. She was not present there herself, but she was seeing people uh, dressed in that other period of history. And the thing that happened was apparently in that same location. So she had just been picking up the information from the surrounding that she was in. This is typically a psychic perception, and it didn't make any sense if you would translate these so-called dream elements as metaphors relating that to herself. It wouldn't make sense. So you have to accept that psychic perceptions are a possibility. Other options are an out-of-body experience, and I will come back on that, or lucid dreaming, and I will also say a word about these in a moment. Let's look at this experience here of communication or meeting. And I have already shared that example. It's a man who says, I was with my beloved wife who died some months ago. She was more refreshed, purified, and radiant than ever. It seems it wasn't really like a usual dream. We were there closely together, sharing a moment of love. It was just a moment of bliss, which I can still feel in my heart now. Her specific vibration was so clearly identifiable. I wasn't surprised. It felt totally natural. After that experience, I woke up. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, and I felt thankful and at peace. And I went back to sleep. So here we have a situation that is clearly not a dream. It has specific characteristics. This kind of experience is recognizable by the fact that it is not filled with images or details about the place, about people, about a specific action. There are no dream elements other than just being together, apart from the feeling of a presence, a connection, and the memory of a verbal exchange or non-verbal, the content of which is often not clearly remembered. So the words are not that important, it's the being together that may be important. So there is no real dream setting, dream story. It's quite different. It's just an experience of being together. Now pay attention. This kind of experience should not be confused with having in a normal dream, a dream story, one dream actor whom you realize afterwards that in fact that person has already died. Now, it can happen that among the people appearing in your dreams, there are people who in fact have died. That doesn't imply that you have a specific experience of meeting or communicating with that person. It just means that whatever you projected on that person is being picked up and used as a dream element in your dream. So this is not at all the same case here. Let's look at another example of communication experience. This is a young woman said, after my grandmother died, I felt terrible because I didn't go to visit her when she was in the hospital. I thought she would be coming back home, but she died suddenly. My first thought, when I heard that she had died, was that I didn't say goodbye to her. I was tormented by guilt and anger for not telling her how much I loved her. Until one night I had this dream. I dreamt that I was awakened by a phone ringing in the hallway upstairs in my house. I got up out of my bed and went to answer the phone. As I picked up the phone, the dark hallway I was standing in became fully illuminated. I said, "Hello," and my grandmother's voice said, "Hello, Sally, this is Grandma." I said, "Hi, how are you?" And we spoke for about 10 minutes until we were ready to hang up. I can't recall what we spoke about. But finally, my grandmother said she had to go. And I said, "Okay, Grandma, take care. I love you." She said, "I love you too. Goodbye." And I said, "Goodbye." As I hung up the phone, the illuminated hallway became dark again. I walked back to bed and fell asleep. That was my dream. When I woke up the next morning, and then for real, and ever since, I have been at peace with my grandmother's death. So here again, reformulating and considering the grandmother as her own subpersonality, as a part of herself, would not be very meaningful, while looking at it as a communication experience makes full sense. Of course, you can still imagine that the person who has this kind of experience with a person that she loves very strongly, you can still imagine that she role plays her grandmother, imagine being the grandmother, looking at herself, telling her, I love you, that would be a meaningful experience. But it doesn't mean that it is really related to this experience. It can be considered as a real communication experience. So, what about out of body experiences? Some people claim to have had a conscious experience of finding themselves outside of their physical body. And this can happen spontaneously during surgery or at a car accident, when you have a sudden shock or a chemical reality that makes you jump out of your physical body. But some people also have the capacity to move out of their bodies at will. They just decide to go out. They have a specific technique for doing that, and they find themselves outside of their bodies. How can we explain that? It's quite simple. We just have to consider that, according to ancient traditions and some mystery schools, we don't only have a physical body, we also have some kind of subtle body, a light body, an energy body that can separate itself from the physical body with our consciousness. So this experience can also happen during our sleep. In fact, it happens spontaneously with most people when they sleep. And when the memory of that experience is retained, which is not always the case, I would even say rarely the case, it can easily be confused with dreams. But some of you may have had that experience of finding yourself flying, seeing things with a more vivid kind of color from above, looking at places and just moving at the speed of your mind. So these are the characteristics of this out-of-body experience. There is a sense of lightness, of well-being and freedom. Colors may appear to be more vivid, and the subject will normally have a sense of flying or floating above the ground, moving just by the will of your mind. When these conditions are met, it may make no sense at all when observed elements are just reformulated as metaphors. We have to accept that possibly we were looking at things that were really there. Let's look at this example. This is from a man who had recurringly, and he was used to having these experiences of being out of his body. One night I woke up in an out-of-body state, floating just above my physical body, which I clearly saw lying below me on the bed. A candle had been left burning on the other end of the room during the evening, and I gently floated down towards the candle with the intention of blowing out the flame to conserve wax. I put my face up close to the candle, and I had some difficulty in putting out the flame. I had to blow on it several times before it finally seemed to extinguish. Then I turned around, saw my body lying on the bed, and I gently floated back into it. Once in the physical body, I immediately turned over and went back to sleep. But the next morning, I awoke and found that the candle had completely burnt down. It seemed as if my out-of-the-body efforts had affected only a non-physical candle. This case is interesting because it shows how someone can identify the difference between an out-of-body experience and a dream when trained in this experience. But also, it allows us to understand the reality of this out-of-body dimension as one that remains partially subjective, created or biased by the power of our own will. This man here, in this case, was blowing on the candle. Finally, after efforts of blowing, saw the candle extinguished, while the physical candle, in fact, was still burning. But he wanted so much to see it extinguished that he created the image of being extinguished. Now, this shows how our mind can create images while we are in an out-of-body state. And indeed, those who have studied these experiences note some deficiency in either memory or critical thinking during this kind of state. So there might be some confusion in identifying things that you see. Sometimes you see things that are not possible to be there, but you create them because your own mind projects the form of it. So it's a little bit tricky to handle. It's not exactly dreams, but it's not necessarily objective observation. This topic may be controversial, as some skeptics refuse to admit its reality, the reality of being out of our physical body, because this challenges mainstream science and beliefs. But there is a wide body of evidence and research which confirms that many reports of such experiences are valid considering. In any case, there seem to be areas of human consciousness and experience that are of a different nature than dreaming, and as a consequence, we have to remain open-minded when dealing with dreams. Human nature is more complex than what a number of people want or are ready to believe. Now, one word about lucid dreaming. I don't have direct experience in this, neither by myself nor from people who have had experience, so I can't say a lot about lucid dreaming. But what I know is that some people claim to be able to wake up and be aware of their dreaming state so that they can direct their dream experience. Now, it seems to me that this leads to an experience that is in fact the same, or at least very similar, as an out-of-body experience. So you might be in a situation where you know you are dreaming, but in fact you are directing or modifying the things so that you can control your dream experience. Now, in any case, lucid dreaming does not seem to make space for a receptive attitude towards dreams. The idea of controlling the dream's content is reducing the possibility to receive meaningful messages from that part of us that has a wider understanding of who we are. So what is the difference between wake dreaming and lucid dreaming? I am not totally clear about that. But personally, I don't pay too much attention to lucid dreaming because what I have really interest in is how to understand the dreams that are like messages to us that come to us because they offer us valuable guidance. These are the ones that I feel are worth understanding and working with. Lucid dreaming offers us experiences that are of a different nature and that don't carry the same kind of meaning. So this is it for this unit. We still have a number of demonstrations for you to watch, and then we will finalize the training. Bye bye for now. See you soon.